basically gender equality, but not as rights. Some organizations do, like asking for rights to the state, but as anarchists, what we want is mostly to change the whole domination structure that subjugates some gender categories and social classes to exploitation and oppression. That's why we understand that feminism can't be only seen as an individual issue, like the gender issue in an individual's way, but that we need to see feminism in a social political perspective. So that's kind of the way we see as LALSA feminism. So as anarchists and feminists, we propose to struggle against both capitalism and patriarchy at the same time. For example, one of the reasons we were created is because of the lack of feminism and gender perspective within the revolutionary and leftist movements in Chile. That, like we observed in Chile, that was really like most of the people that claim to be revolutionary or leftist in general or anarchist and saying like as obvious that they were feminists, but it wasn't actually like in practice. It was also like in theory, something that they claim to be, but sometimes reproducing also machist practice or gender discrimination or homophobic discrimination, homophobic behavior within the very social movement. So that's kind of the reason, one of the more important reasons why we created SFSU, to respond to that problem and feeling the lack of gender perspective and feminism. So that's why what we propose to do is to insert feminism in social movements from a revolutionary perspective and a class perspective, seeking the emancipation of the working class women or all gender oppressed and exploited by patriarchy and capitalism, but also by the state and the church that are the whole system of what oppress us and exploit us. So what we do, our work basically is based on what we call social insertion. That means that we insert ourselves within the social movements. For example, we work in 3 areas that are the unions, with the workers, with communities, and also within the within the student movement. So, with the unions, first of all, you need to understand that in Chile, unions are a bit different because they are actually formed by the very workers themselves that organize otherwise. We don't have organizers, staffers, that kind of thing. So it's mostly the very workers organizing like federation of those workers. So one of the more important work we did last year was with the domestic workers union. That happened to be to suffer from a triple exploitation because of being women, because of being working class women, but also because of the work they do that is highly discriminated. So most of all, we did with them a series of workshops, also supporting them in their struggle and their demands for legal recognitions, be able for them to claim for their rights, to also to be able to express themselves, like with their boss, to claim for half an hour for lunch, or to be able to ask for a day off, the kind of thing that seems basic but was very difficult for them to ask. So yeah, that's basically what we did with union, and also supporting other unions, coming to demonstration with them, trying to insert feminism and gender perspective within the workers' movement. With communities, basically in Chile, to understand the context, we work with neighborhood, most of the neighborhood in Santiago, and in all the big cities, has been built before the dictatorship, like in the 60s, when all the people was coming from the countryside to the city, and they organized themselves because they didn't have actually a place to live, they didn't have lands, so they organized themselves as communities to occupy lands in the city, and to build their own houses, their own street. They built together their own neighborhood, as called. So that history of organization they have, the sense of community they have, has been destroyed during the dictatorship. That's why we're trying to work with them to revive the sense of community that has been destroyed, and inserting again the feminist perspective, and trying to tackle issues that they are living in daily life, like gender violence or sexuality, for example. The means of contraception, there are some things that the access is very, very restrictive for the working class specifically. And finally, with the student movement, actually we were very recently starting to work with the student movement. That was because before that we were very creative. We wanted to focus our work with unions in community, because the idea of organization is actually to give feminism a concrete practice, and to get out or to break out with the academic feminism that is more often built and tackled in universities and in the research thing, or in the theory. So we wanted to give an actual concrete work to feminism. So yeah, we saw the necessity to work also with the student movement, because it was actually a very strong and influencing movement, as Gabriel was saying, and that's why we decided to work also with them, and also because of the election of Melissa Sepúlveda, the president of the Federation of Students of the University of Chile. That is an anarchist part of the FED, and is also one of the founding members of the organization. So yeah, we found like the opportunity to insert some demands like non-sexist education within the main framing of vindication of the student movement. Basically, the main method we use as much internally as externally within our meetings, or also with the workshop we do in communities, in unions, are basically based on some method that come from popular pedagogy, and one of the one we use most is the theater de press. That happens to be a very powerful, very useful, appropriate tool for tackling gender issues. So that's basically the work we do.
I don't want to get how do you bring together all the ideologies, like the communists, the socialists, and the anarchists? So here in the Bay Area, the population is pretty divided. There's a lot of different ideologies, and they all make fun of each other. So I've been to all the meetings, and the socialists make fun of the anarchists make fun of the communists. It's just so hard. I don't know how do you guys what method, what do you guys do to bring people together?
Yeah, we had a lot of that too at one point, but I think an effort that especially anarchists have been doing lately is the idea that to actually form unity and form different relationships with other groups, what we need to do is do it not in base of what is the best gear guide for the revolution.
No.
And what we're trying to do is do it in a rules-core program and different things that are framed within the politics section. For example, discussing what we call different strategies to push further as not only anarchists but also as other type of group that want to support this of the revolutionary left and different ideas like this. For example, the idea of multisectorality. Now we have a group that's not only of us, of the FEL, but we have Marxist-Leninists, we have Trotskyists, we have other type of groups all together fighting for this same idea, this idea of multisectorality. Because they understand that in this moment, the importance is not to debate, if we need a state in the future or we don't need a state, those type of discussions, the eternal discussions sometimes. The importance to discuss right now on the ground is how do we push forward the social movement in this moment. And in that perspective, we have a unification of different groups that have come together to fight for those type of things. Yeah, it's basically that.
I want to also to add, for example, we have all the time that kind of ideological conflicts, but I think that the difference in Chile is that there's really like a conscience or an awareness that we need to work together if we want to gain, if we want to achieve what we want. So sometimes the goal is more important. What we want is more important than any ideological conflict. We just like put aside those things to work together on to do like joint work in some things. For example, there is another feminist organization in Chile that's actually Trotskyist, and is very close to us in some way because they also have a class perspective. They are feminists, but they are Trotskyists and we are anarchists, and there and historical conflict, So, but in spite of that, in spite of all the difficulties that we have been at the beginning, we actually do joint work with them and other organizations, other feminist organizations. For example, to fight for the struggle for abortion, or for example for the International Women's Day on the 8th of March. So that kind of thing, we don't like work with them during all year because that couldn't be possible, I think. But yeah, for important things we accept to be okay. We're not discussing like ideological things, but a concrete work of thing we want to achieve.
You see, the things we can agree with those, we push forward those ideas, and we acknowledge that there are things we're going to disagree with. But that's how it works. That's why we're not the same organization.
You were speaking the last speaker, I forgot your name, about self-organized, yes, Melissa, excuse me, about self-organized neighborhoods. Perhaps you could tell us more about what era the houses were created and were they done outside of the urban area, and was there any self-management of waste and roads?
Well, yeah. Something that happened in the 50s and the 60s with the agrarian reform in Chile, And with many people coming to the big cities, is that there were lack of housing. That's one of the problems. So different groups of people starting occupying land in the cities or just outside the cities to build their own neighborhoods in, like, I don't know, like plastic houses or like wooden houses. Very precarious and without water and without services and all that. And that was the basis for very, very strong communities in the 60s that were very politicized at some point. And for instance, I remember this neighborhood in Santiago, which it was kind of like the countryside outside of Santiago at that point, but now it's like surrounded by the city, which is called Nueva La Habana, New Habana. So this is like 62, 63, so it's explicit reference to La Habana revolutionary, La Habana of the Cuban Revolution. Many leftist groups, revolutionary groups, were also involved in these initiatives, like trying to help people to build their houses, to create community, and also to organize the struggle for an actual house. So they were basically communities of resistance and struggle to get a house. And in the 60s, where we had progressive governments, and then from 1970 to 1973 with Salvador Allende, socialist government, some of these neighborhoods were turned, like these occupations were turned into actual neighborhoods. There were public projects that had the government, the architecture students or construction students from the universities that were all meeting to build houses, design them in, I wouldn't say sustainable ways because that concept was not really used at that moment, but you see those neighborhoods that were built at that time, and it's affordable housing, but it's very different from the public funded housing that you have now, which is basically private corporations getting public funds to build shitty houses for poor people, right? In those times, they were like working class housing with dignity. So it's like that mix of communities, resistance, and social movements trying to build like dignity in the city, like urban planning, sustainability in a way, especially like sustainability for a community. But then in the 90s, you get some of the same conflicts, and also people occupying lands to live and survive. But then you don't have this big state with social democratic programs that were trying to help the people, but you had a neoliberal state completely privatized. So these organizations were very militant in the 90s and 2000s to fight for their houses. It was not just the people occupying lands, it was also people that had debt for their houses, and also people that didn't have a house and lived with their relatives. So we have like houses with 4 or 5 families living together. That was also a huge problem in Santiago and different cities of Chile. But at that point, you had, in the occupations, you had people in big communities with a real sense of community and struggle, from the struggle. But then when they were given a solution and they were taken to neighborhoods, first of all, what they did was like separating people, like sending different families to different houses or different neighborhoods. So they destroyed the communities in a very physical sense. And then also they were, of course, integrated to the, I don't know, like utilities. Now they had to pay for water, for electricity, for services, which they didn't before that. They were illegally taking electricity from the system, but they were not paying for it. So now they were forced to go to the work in different ways. Like it's not that precarious work. They didn't live as poor as they did before, but now they're integrated into the system. So that created contradictions, right? So they are living better, but they're in a poor condition if you see the longer perspective. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's
sounds
the
like
problem.
an interesting movement I've never heard of. And so you indicate that some people actually still occupy these areas even though they've been normalized through having to pay for utilities and that kind of thing.
they build neighborhoods in other places and they displace the people to those neighborhoods. That's how they destroyed the occupation.
Most of them were put in government housing.
Yeah. It's not, well, it's government funded, but it's privately built, so it's corporations that get the money.
Have there been any nonviolent protests that have resulted in violence or conflict with police forces?
The student movement had different evolutions, at least in the marches of 2011. You had the first type of mobilizations that were very culturally involved type of mobilization. We did like different flash mobs. There were some photos there, like different ideas. Like they did actually a thriller of Michael Jackson. They did that with 400 people, 400 students in front of the presidential palace demanding for education. They did that and other two type of different things. All in the idea, in the sense that in that moment, in that initial moment of the movement, you needed people on your side. So we needed the people to actually support the movement. After that, we had a very strong repression because there was actually, the movement was actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at one point, the government was very afraid about that. They have already diminished one of their ministries of education, and now they wanted to prohibit all mobilization that could occur in the streets for education. So in that context, there was a very strong repression. And in general, there's a very strong repression against students. And that was a very, very particular context where there was two marches. Those two marches convoked a lot of people downtown, and there was just a struggle and basically a confrontation with the police that had been occurring since 10 a.m. until 4 a.m. in the morning, because there was just more and more people going to downtown. There was more and more people just getting out of their houses, looking at this like very, very complex situation where basically their kids were being beat up. So the people just come out with their pots demanding, and this was just like this whole street battle that was from 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. But in other contexts, we still see very strong repression. We still see that in 2011, one kid that was manifesting within the streets, well, maybe not, it was just he only wanted to see the politics that were occurring in his neighborhood, and he was shot by the police, with a policeman that right now is still on duty. We've seen people being kidnapped, we've seen people being dead, beaten into unconsciousness, militants of our organization. We have militants of our organization being arrested and then put in different utensils within their backpacks, accusing them of being terrorists of some sort, applying the terrorist act against them. And we've seen this with all different types of social movements. So it's a very complex situation. In the south of Chile, the indigenous people that are fighting for their lands, at least one of them dies within confrontation of the police every year. So it's a very repressive state. It's not a very, very complicated situation. So yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Michael. Thank you all for coming here, and thanks for all the organizers that helped put this on. I see some student leaders here from our campus, and I think so. We always need encouragement coming from outside, outside the U.S., outside our university. And I think a question that we sometimes come across is how do you keep momentum? Sometimes we can get things going, but it'll just kind of drop off and lose momentum. And are there any types of organizing structures that you use or prefer?
Okay, momentum. Well, there's basically two dynamics that occurs within the student movement. One is major struggles that would be national type of struggles that occur. We have observed that they occur normally 1 year and a half, in between. 1 year is a very strong moment, then there's a more decayed moment, then there's a strong one again. So what we do in intermediate of those two moments that we actually go to resolve local type of struggles. So maybe 1 year you're not going to have a great confrontation for free education, but for example in my school we had struggled because we didn't have a roof, and we wanted a roof because it's important to have a roof. So we fought and we won the roof, and that's something we're very proud of, and we're very happy to have a roof. So that was a very important process to have people still be mobilized within the situations. That you have like sometimes minus momentum for the national organization, for the national struggles. But you do still have like local issues. So that's something that's been very important. Actually, people to be related to the demands that they're actually fighting for. Like actually having a material condition that they can see, this is something that I should fight for because it affects me directly.
I would also say that having an organization such as the Libertarian Student Front has been very important. It was, as Gabriel was saying, it was founded in 2003, so it's almost 11 years now. And having this organization with a clear analysis of the education system, of the different conflicts in particular universities or colleges or high schools, it's a good way to create a continuity between the struggles. And also, it's one of the ways to keep the memory of the struggles. That's also very important. So, because you have it's very fast rotation within especially in college, right? So you need to have something or someone like guarding that memory of the struggle, of the past struggles. And permanent organizations can do that, which are not student groups, which are not like student societies, which can dissolve and have like a change of staff every 4 years, but permanent organizations that are from outside the universities and or colleges or high school, and can connect different students from different institutions. It's basically political organizations for the student movement. That's what the Libertarian Student Movement is.
Yeah, well, about structure of organization, the idea is that there's no ideal structure, but you do have like ideal type of principles. Like the idea is that you have the majority of the people discussing, you have the majority of the people actually participate in them, and you have principles like the idea that all the political discussion needs to be done by students themselves. Understanding that leaderships or those type of things, they are not a good way because we see that people are not getting directly involved. So what we do is that we, for example, in my school, in my federation, it works like this. We have a general assembly in my department. If some other departments have it by degree, some have it by generation, it depends. That depends. But in mine, it's a general assembly for our department, Department of Science. Then we have a spokesmanship. I had the spokesmanship in 2011 for my student assembly. And from there, then you have all the different, like the council of spokesmanship, and then there's a comparison of all the different discussions, and then there's a general opinion of the whole university. And then you can have the confederacy, that's of all the different federations of the universities. So it basically works like that. It's from below, there's the political discussion, then it's